Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I decided to go a little bit early because I got a lot of stuff to get through today. And we've got a jam-packed show for you from Letterboxd reviews for the month of September, as well as an old movie review, an old animated short review, and then we'll be doing the last level in LEGO Star Wars for the Phantom Menace. And so with that, let's get the show started and check out the new theme that I've done that YouTube for sure will not take down because it's from their audio library. So with that, let's get started with the theme song. Alright, and so for the first 7 movies here on September 2nd, these are the movies that I watched at Cinecon. And to get a more in-depth of the thoughts and whatnot that I had for these movies, go ahead and check out the video I did on Cinecon around September 9th or so, but it's on the channel here, so make sure to check that out. But just briefly, so the first film was Lancer Spy from 1937, and first time watch for everybody there, because what's cool about Cinecon, and I'm beating a dead horse here, but what's cool about it is they show movies that haven't been seen since they were originally in theaters. None of these have a DVD, a VHS, even a Laserdisc. These are movies that have not really been seen since they've been in theaters. Now, they've certainly been at different film festivals and whatnot, some of them, not all of them, but anyway, so that's the first one here. It's a World War I spy thriller. I recommend checking it out. It was one of my favorite ones there. And then moving on, the next film was The Harvester, also 4 out of 5. I thought it was a fun movie. It's definitely although it doesn't take place in the Depression era, it pretty much is a Depression era story with the guy building his own house, kind of in a love triangle. I actually really liked it. And what was cool was one of the actresses, Cora Sue Collins, who's been a few times to Cinecon, she was there. She had never seen the film. But the character she plays is like 5 or 6 years old, and I think she's 92, 93. She's up there in years, so it was really cool having her there to talk about briefly. So that was cool. Next was The Flower of Doom, which is a silent film from 1917. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. I did not like it very much. It was a weird, hard to follow along. A lot of the footage was missing. So they had title cards to kind of tie it in, but honestly, I wasn't too interested in it. It has an interesting concept, but I just didn't think the execution was very good. Of a kind of like underground crime organization and whatnot, and which usually would be up my alley, right? But this one didn't work for me. All right, the next was The Bride Wore Crutches, and that was from 1940. It was a 4 out of 5 first time watch. It was a really fun screwball kind of comedy mixed with kind of I wouldn't say a crime thriller per se, but it had crime elements to it. It was a funny, entertaining film. And you figure out literally the last scene of the movie why it's called The Bride Wore Crutches. It's a fun little movie. Not the best movie in the world, but I had a good time with it. Alright, next was Nobody's Fool. 5 out of 5, first time watch. This was the best movie for me at Cinecon. The character of Will, he's like so straightforward, very literal and whatnot, and I really liked him as a character. I thought he was really funny. And what was cool too was I just loved how everything he said and everything he talked about um, was a double entendre in a way. Like the one I mention all the time is his name was like, oh, Will Wright. And so he goes in and they say, oh, are you Will White? And he says, right. It's just a funny little joke like that. There's several like that throughout the film. It was just really, really fun. So to me, that was the best at CineCon. All right, the next was Hotel for Women. That one, I gave a 4 out of 5. It was the last one at CineCon. It's kind of a roller coaster, and the premise is kind of interesting where a girl runs away from home, ends up at a hotel, and they get her into the modeling business, and kind of just the crazy things that happen with them along the way. Pretty interesting story, but it's definitely more of a chick flick. It's not really meant for... do I know this guy? God, do you know gaming? Saying real fun. I love that. Well, thank you. But yeah, anyways, that's Hotel for Women. Next was an animated short. So I'm adding animated shorts as part of the shows now, as you've guys seen for the past few weeks. And this is the first one I did, which was a Tom and Jerry one. And I won't get too much into that just because I've already done the review of it. But follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and here on YouTube. You'll see my thoughts on that there. But long story short, Tom inherits an inheritance. And just funny stuff happens along the way. Because it's like Brewster's Millions where he has to spend a certain amount. And yeah, it's fun. So I recommend that. Alright, the next film was Journey to Italy, and this was a movie I reviewed for Really Old Movies as a podcast review. Excuse me. It's a Ingrid Bergman film, and directed by her then husband, Roberto Rossellini. It's a beautifully shot film. I just wasn't a fan of the story. There's not really a plot. You know, there's no hero's journey. There's nothing like that. Just a couple trying to resolve their struggles in marriage, which is very relatable. A lot of people can relate to that, and I just like more structured hero-villain storylines. This movie is not that at all. So if you're into that, though, the more, I wouldn't call it avant-garde per se or anything like that. It's definitely not a traditional narrative film. It's a lot like Summertime, the David Lean film. This one came out before that, but similar type of story where it's more of the atmosphere and more of the experiences the characters are going through versus an actual plot or something to resolve or anything like that. So if you're into that, you'll really like Journey to Italy. Alright, the next film was Mona Lisa Smile. That was a first time watch for me. Let me put that here. Oops. Lisa Smile, 3.5 out of 5. You know, I thought it was a good movie. I like the message that the students, it's an all women's school, they all got to choose kind of how they want to live their lives and whatnot. I thought that was fine. But I think to me as a society, we've kind of demonized stay-at-home moms. And I don't think that's necessary, you know. That's what's built up not just our country, but several countries for thousands of years. So I don't like how in America especially we demonize that. But on the flip side too, there's nothing wrong with women working either, you know, like especially in the economy we're in now, it's hard to survive on just one income. And two, I mean, you know, God forbid anything happen, but if the husband passes away, who's going to provide for the kids, you know? So I think it's an example to me of live and let live. Let people kind of decide for themselves how they want to live. No, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Because to me, either way, it's a major sacrifice, especially for your family. It's a sacrifice to stay at home and raise the kids and be with them 24/7. It's a sacrifice to go to work and provide and all of that. it's a sacrifice either way. And I don't think we should look down on either one. So, anyways, this movie, it's an okay movie. I think I liked the message of it more than I liked the story itself. The story itself is pretty flat and pretty generic. I think Julia Roberts does good. You know, she's doing what she normally does in her roles. I wouldn't be able to really distinguish this performance from that of ones in like Runaway Bride and movies like that. This is definitely up her alley. And I do like the art history part of it. And I think one of the better scenes in the movie is where she's kind of talking with him, you know, what really constitutes art. I thought that was an interesting story. To me, I kind of lean more to the side of not only is it creative, it invokes an emotion in you, whether good or bad. Because to me, a lot of modern art is kind of in this messaging where it's like, oh, well, anything can be art. I disagree with that. I think everything has an element of art, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is an art in itself, if that makes sense. You know, like pop art, and I'll get off on this tangent in a second, but like I think of Andy Warhol, right, with his pop art, you know, the soup can, right? The soup can itself, I wouldn't consider a piece of art, but it was a piece of art when he painted it and captured the, you know, the detail of it and whatnot. That to me is more of art. Or like the pictures he did of like his most famous one, like Marilyn Monroe, the different color schemes and whatnot, and just showing the different colors. I think that to me is more of art. Also, like the classic Renaissance art, I think is much more interesting, and I just think nowadays, because we're like our architecture and whatnot is so devoid of creativity and care, and you know, everyone wants to be more of minimalist, that I think we're missing out on a lot of the creativity and the artistry. I mean, you look at just how like post offices used to be built in like the 1890s, way more fancy and creative and just intricate and detailed. I love that. That's the kind of art I really like. I don't like well, it's like the meme. Nowadays, McDonald's just feels like a corporate office when you go to it. When we were kids, it had that colorful roof. They had the little playgrounds and all of that. I think we're so far into postmodernism or postmodernism. I kind of want to return and have like a renaissance. This kind of feels like a dark age of art. So anyways, that's my art tangent. And I could do that with computers too. I love computers as well. But anyways, that this movie, I think that scene really captivated me. So yeah, Mona Lisa Smile. It's definitely more of a chick flick too. It's not an action movie or anything like that. Oops. I keep clicking the wrong thing. Alright, the next film was Twisters. And that was the movie that came out, how long ago was that? I think it was back in July. But my theater was still playing it. I hadn't seen it yet, and my wife and I, we decided, after watching the trailer and listening to some of the songs, like the Ain't No Love in Oklahoma, we're both like, we gotta see this movie. This looks really entertaining. And it was. I had such a blast with it. You know, I'll be honest, I haven't watched the original film probably 10, 15 years, so I don't really remember what that one was like. I would like to rewatch it and kind of see the comparisons. But to me, this was a really fun and exhilarating and entertaining film. I love Glenn Powell. I think he's got that Tom Cruise movie star feel to him. I think he could really become a big star like that. I know the world is kind of changing from that, where more like social media people are becoming the stars, but I think he has potential of being a major movie star. So he's really funny, really entertaining. It's too bad he won't be the Hal Jordan for DC. I actually think he'd be perfect, because he's got that snarkiness to him, but he's also, you know, heroic. I think he could pull it off really well. And the soundtrack for this movie is so good. I listen to the songs from it all the time. It's really, really entertaining. Now, when it comes to country music, kind of talking about art again, I don't like a whole lot of modern country, like the Florida Georgia Line kind of stuff. I don't like the pop country. I listen to more of like the old Hank Williams and or later on a little bit with like Johnny Cash and I have a playlist on Spotify that's just old country music like that from the 50s to the 70s and whatnot. I kind of like that style more. But the Ain't No Love in Oklahoma song, that one really connected with me. I really was entertained by it. That one is not like the pop country that I think is too prevalent today. But I'm kind of seeing a resurgence in country music, and I'm really happy about that because that is a very uniquely American style of music. Western movies like cowboy movies, I'm hoping get a resurgence. It's a very uniquely American genre, so I hope more of that keeps coming out because it's really, really awesome. All right, the next film I watched was Wicked Little Letters, and I think it was on Apple TV, I want to say. My wife was watching the movie, so I came in about halfway through it. And initially, I didn't really want to watch it, but the story kind of hooked me a little bit. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a crazy movie. Long story short, it's a British film where, I don't remember her name, but the main actress, she's in a couple things. I think she's in the DC movies. She decides to write these letters to her neighbors as kind of a way of getting back at her dad, but they're like horribly obscene with profanity and whatnot. And this is in like the 1800s in London. I think it's in London. So it's very, very shocking to everybody. And it's kind of a clever, I think it's based on a real story too. It's pretty clever, pretty fun. I don't know. It wasn't for me though. Like, I had fun with it, but it's not one I would want to watch again. It's pretty crazy, but there's definitely a rant at the end of the movie that's pretty great. But to me, this is a good example of what adverse childhood experiences can do to a child. That's kind of more of what I got out of it, just from my training in mental health places. You know, I work at an agency that does that. I do their flyers and videos and whatnot. So some of the training I've gotten from that, I was like, okay. That's more of what I got out of it, not necessarily the entertainment value. So I don't know if everybody would appreciate it or be entertained by it. All right, we'll get through these quick. So Beetlejuice, rewatch. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I had a blast with it. Love it. 4.5 out of 5. Great music, great cast, great visual effects all around. Really fun time. The next was Seven Chances. This is a Buster Keaton film, and I reviewed it for the channel. I liked it. I like his other films a little bit more, though, like Sherlock Jr. and The General and Our Hospitality. I think those are more entertaining because they have it's like a time period, you know, set period, and then funny gags that happen around it. This one doesn't have that. It honestly felt more like his earlier shorts than it did one of his feature-length films. So 4 out of 5. It was still entertaining and still funny, but not his best work. All right, next was an animated short, The Bodyguard, another Tom and Jerry one. It had been a long time since I've seen it. 3 out of 5. It's just okay. All right, next was Harry Potter, and in America we call it the Sorcerer's Stone, and everywhere else it's Philosopher's Stone. But my wife and I, we rewatched all the Harry Potter movies, and actually we just finished the last one last night. So I'll have my review of that next month when I do this again for Letterboxd. But I really like this one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. It's still a really fun, entertaining movie, and I think one of the best of the whole series, just as a whole. All right, next was Little Women from 1949. I watched this for the channel. I gave it a 3 out of 5. June Allison really ruins the movie for me. So I don't like her style of acting at all. She's very hammy, and I'm just not a fan of it. So she really brought it down for me. If you want to see a really good version from the old Hollywood era, I would recommend the Katharine Hepburn one from 1933. That one's really, really good. This one's just okay. Alright, the next one is Putting on the Dog. That was an animated short for Tom and Jerry. Gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I had a good time with it. I remember watching it as a kid. It was on Cartoon Network all the time. It was fine. Like I said, if you want more in depth, check my Instagram reel or TikTok for it. But basically, Tom is trying to hide from the dogs, and he finds a statue of a dog and wears the head for it. That's just all the funny gags around him being discovered and whatnot. It's just okay. Alright, the next film was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I gave it a 4 out of 5. So, we own the extended editions of the first 2 movies. I hear you could buy the other ones in Europe and not in America, so eventually I want all of the extended ones. This movie, though, the scenes that were brought back, I could actually see why they cut them out. Like the introduction of Lucius Malfoy, for example, I think is much better at the bookstore than it was at Nocturne Alley. Seeing him twice like that, I was like, it was a much better intro earlier because it kind of takes the tension out of seeing him again. It's like, well, we already saw this guy with his cane and whatnot. Also, I think the runtime is still too long for this movie. I like the film. I think it's a very good, like, mystery and detective film. I think it's the most of the whole series, and I like the basilisk stuff too. I think that's pretty interesting. But yeah, 4 out of 5. Next is Prisoner of Azkaban. This is a lot of people's favorite. It's actually not my favorite Harry Potter, but I still really like this film. I love Gary Oldman. He's great as Sirius, but he's very underutilized. I like Lupin. I don't remember his name, the actor's name, but the character, he's really cool. I've always thought the time turner aspect was a bit too convenient. If it was introduced earlier in the movie, they were kind of hinting at it, where they're like, how did she get here? But I don't know, it still feels a little bit out of nowhere. Because they never use it again. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Alright, the next film was The Goblet of Fire. I give it a 5 out of 5. This is my favorite Harry Potter film. I love the tournament. I love the, Voldemort coming back. I love the Death Eaters and all that. I like that the tensions are starting to rise and the series is becoming a bit more serious. Prisoner of Azkaban for sure was too, but this to me really, really sets the tone for basically the rest of the series. You can almost watch it kind of like in Star Trek, how some people consider 2, 3, and 4 a trilogy. You could almost consider 4 through, 7B, 4 through Part 2 of Deathly Hallows. You could consider that a section of story, and then Sorcerer's Stone to Prisoner of Azkaban could be like the early years. That could be its own series too. So, anyways, I love this film. I wish we got to see more of Mad-Eye Moody in the film series because he's a really interesting character, probably one of my favorites. And it's too bad the most we see of him in the film series is when it's actually Barty Crouch Jr. So that's a bit disappointing. Alright, the next film was The Order of the Phoenix. This one is okay. I give it 4 out of 5. I like the whole, like they're starting Dumbledore's army and whatnot, and we see a bit more of Voldemort, but they cut out a lot from this story. If you've read the books like I have, you'll know that this is the longest book of the series. It's like 900 pages, I want to say. And I think Deathly Hallows is even shorter. They cut out a lot. Like there's a whole subplot where they go to the insane asylum where they see the Longbottom family, and they see Gilderoy Lockhart again, and there's just so much missing that I feel like this film suffers as a result. And again, we barely see Gary Oldman as Sirius Black, and he's a big part of the book. So it's a bit disappointing if you're a fan of the book. The movie on its own, though, is very entertaining and very fun. So if you've never read the books, you'll be fine. But I have. A tangent here. I hear that they're planning on doing a TV reboot of the books. I don't know if I like that idea. I think that's how they should have done it initially. But I'm just thinking, Warner Brothers has invested so much into the theme park and into the music in the films and the costumes and all of that. It's going to be very hard to capture all of that again. Because it's not just that they're recasting the characters. You have to think about that. Hogwarts is going to look different. The emblems for the houses are going to look different. The wands are going to look different. Diagon Alley is going to look different. Everything is going to look different. I just don't think it's a good idea, considering how much they have invested in making Universal and all that look like the movies. But not just that, too. When people think of Harry Potter, they're going to think of those movies. And you're always going to be competing with that. I think they shouldn't do it. And not just because I'm a fan of the movies. I like the movies a lot, but I really don't think it's going to work. It's just not going to happen. But we'll see. We'll see. So anyways, the next film was a Max Steiner documentary. So you may not recognize the name, but he did the score for pretty much every film in old Hollywood. He did the score for Gone with the Wind. He did the score for Casablanca. For let me pull up my list here. King Kong, The Searchers, Treasure of Sierra Madre. He did a lot. And this was an excellent, excellent documentary showing all of that those great scores he did and great music. He is quintessential for film history. If you're going to study old movies, if you're going to be a fan of that like I am, you have to get to know Max Steiner. And it also shows too, though, the price of putting all your effort into your career. He had several marriages. He had one child who ended up committing suicide. It was he paid a hefty price for putting all of his time and energy into his work. So it's not exactly sunshine and roses. And that, I think the film captured that too, is that it wasn't always the best. So I think if you're interested in film history, or if you're just interested in general, and because again, King Kong, Gone with the Wind, these are all scores everybody knows. So for that alone, you should check it out. I highly recommend it. It's on HBO Max, and I give it a 5 out of 5. All right, the next film, and if you know me, I love Casablanca. It's my favorite movie of all time. I actually rewatched it because of the Max Steiner documentary. I was like, I want to watch it again. This time around, I actually listened to the commentary by Roger Ebert while the movie was playing. And I got to tell you, man, I don't know if I'm really a fan of Roger Ebert. Not because he had anything bad to say about the film at all. It's not that. It's when he was doing the commentary, he sounded so disinterested and didn't want to be there. Like, even at the end, he said something to the effect of, Casablanca is not my favorite movie. Citizen Kane is, but everybody else loves Casablanca, so here you go. It's like, what? Wait, what? Why'd you bring him in then? If he doesn't care about the movie, I just think that's silly. It's also just him talking, and there's a lot of pauses and whatnot, because if you're not familiar with commentaries, they're watching the movie while they're talking about it, and later on they edit it to kind of fit in with the flow of the movie. But yeah, it's like, then why did you have him do it? Why didn't you have somebody who actually likes the movie and is famous talk about it? Or have two people talking back and forth. Like, you could have him and then somebody else who loves the movie, and they could kind of discuss it and have it be more of a, what we do now, podcasts. So I do not recommend listening to that commentary if you love this movie. It just sounds like he's getting another paycheck. He's just hamming it in. It's not genuine at all. I did not like it. I think there was another one. I might try that one the next time I watch it, so we'll see. But Casablanca itself is still fantastic. Still one of the best movies ever, and my favorite movie of all time. That hasn't changed. Every time I watch it, I'm like, yep, this is still my favorite movie. And I've only seen it probably 10 or 15 times. And I only saw the film for the first time like 6 years ago. You know, it's just every year I rewatch it at least once or twice. I'm like, nah, it's still my favorite. It's still my favorite. After watching all these other movies too, I'm like, no, it's still my favorite. So anyway, I recommend Casablanca if you haven't seen it. It's on HBO Max. Alright, next is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a good movie. It's actually very dark, but it's also a little funny too. It can get a little too funny, so keep that in mind. And I do miss that they don't get into more of Voldemort's family history and whatnot. This book is my favorite because it goes into that. It also goes into Harry and Ginny's romance and Quidditch and all of that. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. It's the last year that Harry, Ron, and Hermione have a normal year at Hogwarts. So I think the film conveys that pretty well. And I like, I don't remember his name, but the Professor Slughorn actor, he's perfect for that role. All around, it's a good movie, and it's one of my favorite Harry Potter films. Alright, the next film is Shadow of a Doubt from 1943. And this movie I reviewed for the podcast, and I did with my friend Nathan Hale of Maple Street Movies, so make sure to check that review out. We did that, I think it was last week. Yeah, it was last week that the review came out. We reviewed it about a month ago. I try to do those ahead of time so that they're released, you know, they're scheduled and whatnot, so I could focus on the live streams during that week. But anyway, I love that movie. It's not my favorite Hitchcock film, but it's very exhilarating and entertaining and keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's very creepy too, you know. And I think the worst part of it, in the sense of how creepy it is it's an uncle who's trying to hide, and he has a niece, and they're very close. And nothing bad happens, anything like that, but just the fact that... I don't want to spoil it. You know what? It's an 81-year-old film. He's a serial killer who's on the run, and when she finds out, he's starting to threaten to kill her, and just the tension that rises from that, because she looks up to him. She even is named after him too. You know, he's Charles and she's Charlie. I think Charlene, but Charlie. But anyway, very good Hitchcock film. I recommend it if you haven't seen any of them. That it's actually a good one to introduce you to it. Alright, the last movie I saw for the month of September was The Deathly Hallows Part 1. I actually really like it. I give it 4.5 out of 5. What's funny is when I initially saw it, I didn't like it just because of how scary it was and violent and whatnot, but I actually like it a lot more than I remembered. It holds up really, really well compared to Part 2, and I'll tell you about that next month, but it's just really good, and just there's the silly banter between Harry, Ron, and Hermione, but just them going out there and trying to figure out where the Horcruxes are, and just kind of almost how hopeless their task is, but how they're able to do it anyway. And it's just a really good hero's journey story, so I recommend checking it out. And no, I'll save it for the next month about my thoughts on Part 2 and the book as a whole. But anyways, those are the movies I watched for the month of September. It took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, but there were a lot of really good movies I saw, and a lot of good ones I rewatched. So make sure to check out all of those. Alright, so now for some old movie news. So, Warner Archive Collection just announced that they're going to release the entire Thin Man film series into one Blu-ray collection for $50. And this set will have all 6 movies, and I believe it's going to have a behind-the-scenes documentary on it too. But I'm very excited to check this out. I saved it to my wish list because I've been wanting to check out this film series. Everybody tells me to check it out all the time. You know, on HBO Max, they just have a couple of them. They don't have all of them, and I want to see them all. So I'm definitely picking this up. It's coming out. Should check that. Well, you could pre-order it now. I think it comes out November 12th, I want to say. Maybe a little bit later, but yeah, I'm really excited for this. And I think it's cool that, because before they released all these on DVD, and they're re-releasing them all, but on Blu-ray together. And I think that's a very, very smart idea. So make sure to check that out. You could pre-order it on Amazon, or you could go to Blu-ray.com. That's where I got this up at, and pre-order it wherever it is you want it. All right, another one here. I think I've talked about it already, but Kino Lorber has announced Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on 4K. This will be coming out later in November. No, excuse me, October 27th, so later this month. And you can pre-order it right now for $20. They've brought down the price from $40. And I don't know for how long it'll be at $20, but yeah, make sure to get a hold of it. This is an excellent movie. To me, it's the birth of German Expressionism. Excellent movie. And very interesting. You know, if you've watched Tim Burton's movies, or if you've watched other kind of weird movies like that, you'll see where he got his inspiration from. He got it from this movie. Because there's really interesting architecture and weird angles and weird costumes and whatnot. He was heavily inspired by this movie, Tim Burton was. So make sure to check that out on October 22nd. All right, then next announcement. I've talked about this before too. The Frank Capra collection from Columbia with 26 discs. So it was initially going to be $240, but they've brought it down to $169. I don't know for how long, but I would pre-order it now before it goes back up again. So I'm excited to check this out. Eventually, you may see me do a series on this later on down the road. So keep your eyes peeled for that. All right, now we'll get into today's animated short review. And so I've been doing Tom and Jerry for a while, and now I'm going to do a Looney Tunes one. And throughout this animated short review series, I'll be going back and forth between Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and Fleischer. And I'll do the Fleischer Supermans. I've been wanting to watch all of those. I've only seen a few of them. So anyway, now we'll get into today's animated short review. Bosco the Talk Inc. Kid from 1920... I almost said 25, dang it. Bosco the Talk Inc. Kid from 1929, according to its Letterboxd description, is an original short that introduced Bosco and was never formally released. Producer/directors Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising showed it to various studio executives as a pilot for the Bosco character. The tune itself I thought was just okay. It was more impressive to me on a technical level than it was on an entertainment value. The audio is in pretty bad shape. It's very muffled. And I'm actually really glad Bosco didn't end up being the main attraction to Looney Tunes. He's a pretty lame and pretty boring character. That honor would go to Porky Pig, but it took a couple years for that to happen after a trial and error of several characters. And so with that, I gave the short a 2 out of 5. And you can find this tune on YouTube as it is in the public domain. Alright, so that's today's animated short review. Now we'll get into today's movie review. Alright, today's movie review is The Mummy's Ghost from 1944 from director Reginald Leborg. And here are some behind-the-scenes details about the movie from IMDb. Although there are rumors that Lon Chaney Jr.'s scenes in the Mummy series frequently were used by doubles, director Reginald Leborg stated that Chaney did his own scenes in this film. Alright, so those are some interesting behind-the-scenes details. I wonder where that rumor or that thought comes from that Lon Chaney Jr. didn't do the mummy costume. And if you think about it, he did every character. There's a film where he's Dracula, well, son of Dracula. There's a film where he's Frankenstein's monster. There's the Wolfman. He's the Wolfman. And then there's these movies where he's the mummy character. And I'm pretty sure he was the Phantom in a movie too. So he's pretty much been every character. I'll get into my thoughts on the plot now. The plot, I give it a 1 out of 5. I'm sorry, guys. These plots to these mummy movies are melting together for me. I can't distinguish them anymore. They're exactly the same. There's a priest. He happens to have like an amulet or something to bring Carice back to life. There happens to be a descendant of, I think Akhman-Ra is his name. That might be Night at the Museum, but the descendant of the pharaoh that he was guarding and Carice happens to find. It's the same thing over and over. They just change the setting in each film. I honestly think the best ones are when they're in Egypt with the pyramids and whatnot. This movie, they're just in a bayou, and it looks like it's just on the studio lot, honestly. So I was pretty disappointed with the plot, and that's why I gave it a 1 out of 5. Alright, let's talk about the acting. The acting, I also gave a 1 out of 5. It is dreadful. No one is interesting or relatable or someone I want to follow or to succeed or anything like that. And John Carradine, who's another actor who's in a lot of these movies as different characters, I love his voice, and I think he's done great films. He's great in Stagecoach. He's great in Secret of Nim. He's the owl in that movie. He's just not good in this movie. I don't think he was that interesting as a priest. He's very flat and boring, and again, I wouldn't be able to distinguish his performance of that from that of his Dracula that he did in House of Dracula. And that's next week's review, but I don't think he was a very good actor, at least in these movies. They seem pretty dreadful. Lon Chaney Jr. is fine, but Carice, whatever his name, he's hardly in the film. It's not noticeable at all. He's in it for like 2 seconds, it really feels like. So, no, I did not like the acting. It's pretty bad. And I didn't like any of the background characters either. Oh my gosh. It's terrible. Yeah, anyway. Directing. Okay, so this is Reginald is his name? Reginald LeBorg. I almost said LaForge. The other Star Trek character. Reginald LeBorg did a terrible job here. I give it a 1 out of 5. I honestly couldn't tell you the difference between his directing style and that of the other directors that were at Universal doing like the Dracula movies, the Frankenstein movies in the 40s. They all feel the same to me. It's really difficult to tell them apart. You definitely can tell these were B movies that they released with the A features. They're just not that good. And again, to me, The Mummy works better. He's in Egypt. I don't know why we're in America, I think, in this movie. I don't know. Terrible directing. Alright, for cinematography and special effects, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Look, the costume of Carice is still really cool. And the slow walk that Lon Chaney does for him is still really good. I'm not going to discredit that. I'm going to give credit where it's due. It still is pretty menacing and scary. It's just hardly in the film. And I think the scenes where Carice is with John Carradine's character are actually interesting. Like this one right here. When they're actually talking about the mummy stuff, when they're actually with like Egyptian stuff, it's interesting. But this is like the one scene that's like that. But that's why I gave it 3 out of 5. I still really like the costume. Alright, so now we're talking about the music here. The music, I give it a 2 out of 5. It's so bland as per usual, but what was weird to me was, especially at the end, you'll listen to it, you're like, this sounds like a happy, almost like a happy Christmas theme song, like, or just happy movie in general. It's like, this is a horror film, you know? Like, people are dying, and this is not fit the tone at all of the story. So that's why I gave it a 2. It's fine, you know, it's serviceable, but it does not fit the tone at all. It just feels like they went into the archive of Universal. It's like, pull up this one. This should work. Slap it on the end, you know? It's just not good. especially when I was just talking about Max Steiner. Max Steiner's score for Gone with the Wind, for example. When you hear a couple notes from it, you know exactly where it's from. Even if you don't know the names of the songs, you've heard it before. This movie does not have that at all. It's very generic, very basic, and does not fit the tone. So 2 out of 5. Alright, so tallying that all up, that brings my Letterboxd score to a 1.6 out of 5, which I'm just barely rounding to a 2 out of 5. It was very close to being 1.5. And so that brings my Criticalist score to a 32% out of 100. Oof, I think that's bogus. So would I recommend this movie? No. And I'm going to be frank. I haven't liked any of these Mummy movies. Not even the 1932 one. I didn't like that one. The only Mummy movie that I really, really like is actually the Brendan Fraser one from 1999, funny enough. So, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I can't recommend this at all. I can't recommend any of these Mummy movies. The only ones that I've liked are the sequels that were in the 30s for Dracula and Frankenstein. All the others, so far, not so good. But what I'm gonna do with these movies, though, is once my wife and I have kids, these will be the scary movies, quote unquote. I'm gonna have them watch during Halloween and whatnot, just as a family. I think they're safe, and I think kids will, be scared, but not like horrified, if that makes sense. There's a couple movies for that too, but I think for that aspect, I think it'll be fine, for the future. But as of right now, these are terrible movies. All right, well, those are my thoughts on The Mummy's Ghost from 1944 from director Reginald Le Bourg. All right, so let's bring up the single cam here. Turn off display capture. So now I'm going to get into good old Lego Star Wars. It's the last level. Let's put this over here. And we'll put this guy over there. Perfect. Okay. So now let's bring up Lego Star Wars. Okay. I don't know if you guys could tell here. So earlier I went to the dump and threw away a lot of stuff and donated a lot of stuff at the secondhand store too. And I recently ordered a new bookshelf. So if you see right here, it's this little guy here. It's actually a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, but I think it's a good thing. So I'm going to buy another one so I can put it right next to it and have some space in between, because I got a lot of stuff. So let's put Star Wars. You know what? I need to check if our audio's even going. Let's close here. Oh yeah. Oh. I guess it's not going to work on that screen. Okay. Darn. Thought it would work, but maybe not. Oh yeah, I guess I got to turn on my game display here. And let's turn on that view. Okay. don't know why it doesn't automatically pick up my controller. Let's change. Perfect. All right. Anybody else watch Friday Night Tights today? I always love watching that. Today they talked about Joker 2. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm interested in watching that movie. Let's move that real quick. And I'll be honest, though, I haven't seen the first one. I don't really have a desire to. But I hear that the new one is not good at all. Let's see, I did... Okay, yes, I did do that. Here we go, guys. The last level of Phantom Menace. But yeah, just from what they're describing, it doesn't appeal to me. Oh, I think I remember this level. Oh yeah, I have to... Oh. What time did I say? I'm gonna be playing with my cousin. What time did I say? Okay, yeah. So I'll be able to finish this in time, I think. I'm really excited for that Frank Capra collector set. I haven't seen all those movies, but I still think it's really cool. I've almost done all a True Jedi. There must not be much money opportunities in this level. Okay. Let's go to the next part. Obi. I'm Obi. What am I talking about? Oh, almost didn't make that. Do.
did you do that, Qui-Gon? Oh, I went too far. Oh, I need the gun. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Okay, well, here we are. Only stormtroopers. Oh, we're near the end of the level. Roger, roger. No, 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 no. I'm not ready for that. Oh, I'm so close.
Come on. I hate Droidicas, man. They're the worst.
Yes! True Jedi. Do 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 do. Do, do, do.
I just get so lost in the game. It's so good. Definitely doing Attack of the Clones next week. Well, I might do some more Halo. I don't know yet.
not Qui-Gon.
This is the only time that Darth Maul's been in two places at once. You'll see what I mean. That's so sad. Yep. His legs are still there. Rest in peace, Qui-Gon Jinn.
Peace.
All right. Okay, so that's the Phantom Menace. So let me turn that off, turn this back on. Okay, well, that's the show for today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to Really Old Movies. And we do these live streams once a week. I try to do them on either a Thursday or Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Pretty soon Pacific Standard. That'll be changing a couple weeks here. But yeah, on this show, we just like to talk about old movies, animated shorts, do a video game, and then some movie news and whatnot. Trying to emulate the old theater way of doing things back in the 40s and 50s, because you would go there, watch one or two movies, an animated short, some news, whatnot, a newsreel. So we try to emulate that here. And make sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Really Old Movies, where I release behind the scenes details about every week's particular film review. So for example, this week is The Mummy's Ghost, so you'll see some behind the scenes stuff and where you could buy it and whatnot about The Mummy's Ghost. And also make sure to follow me on Twitter, let's see, Rumble, Letterboxd, Criticless. Pretty much, tell you what, go to my Instagram, click on my link tree, and you'll see all the social media where we're at for Really Old Movies, even the website. And like I said, we do this once a week. And make sure to follow me in all those places. But with that, this has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care, everyone.